Captain Jiwon Kim stood on the observation deck of the defense station, watching the golden wheat fields of New Busan stretch to the horizon. The alien sun cast a warm glow over the human colony, making the crops shimmer like waves on an ocean. Children ran between the rows of plants, their laughter carrying on the gentle breeze. Their parents worked nearby, checking the harvest machines and preparing for another successful season. Jiwon smiled as she watched the peaceful scene. This was what humanity had built among the stars. Not weapons or war machines, but farms and schools and homes. New Busan was one of 17 colonies that humans had established across 12 star systems. Each world was a small piece of Earth, transplanted and grown in alien soil. "Beautiful day for the harvest," said Lieutenant Kyung-jae, joining her at the window. He was young, barely 25, and had never seen real combat. Like most Colonial Defense Corps officers, his job was more about helping farmers fix broken equipment than fighting battles. "Every day is beautiful here," Jiwon replied. She had been stationed on New Busan for 3 years, and still marveled at how perfectly the human colonists had adapted to their new world. They had built something special here, something worth protecting. Across the galaxy, Dr. Minho Park was having similar thoughts as he worked late in his laboratory on Harmony Point Research Station. The station orbited a gas giant in the Kepler system, far from any inhabited worlds. Minho studied alien plant life, looking for new crops that could help human colonies grow even better food. His work was quiet and peaceful, the kind of science that made life better for everyone. He paused in his research to look out at the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. Somewhere in those clouds lived tiny organisms that might hold the key to feeding millions of people. This was the work that drove him every day, not building weapons or defenses, but finding ways to help humanity flourish in their new homes among the stars. On Earth, Commander Yuna Lee sat in the Intelligence Center of Fleet Command, reviewing routine reports from the colonies. Trade shipments, weather patterns, population growth, all the boring but important details of keeping 17 worlds connected and supplied. Most of the reports were good news. The colonies were thriving, growing stronger every year. But Yuna also monitored the movements of alien species throughout the galaxy. Most were friendly, content to trade with humans and share knowledge. A few were neutral, keeping to themselves in their own corner of space. Only one species worried her, the Velkari Empire. The Velkari were warriors, builders of a vast empire that spanned 47 star systems. They had conquered dozens of other species, either destroying them completely or forcing them into slavery. For years they had watched human expansion with growing anger. To the Velkari, humans represented everything they despised: weakness, compassion, and a refusal to take what they wanted by force. Yuna had read the reports from human diplomats who had tried to negotiate with the Velkari. The aliens saw human colonies as soft targets, wealthy worlds defended by farmers and scientists instead of soldiers. They spoke of humans with contempt, calling them the weak race and children playing at civilization. But the Velkari had never attacked human space directly. They seemed content to watch and wait, perhaps hoping that humanity would simply abandon their colonies and retreat back to Earth. Yuna hoped they would continue to wait, giving humanity time to grow stronger and more secure. On New Busan, 15-year-old Do-hyun Choi was visiting his aunt and uncle for the harvest festival. He lived on Earth with his parents but loved coming to the colony worlds to see how humans had adapted to life under alien suns. Everything here was slightly different from Earth. The longer days, the different colors in the sky, the way the wheat grew taller and stronger in the alien soil. Do-hyun was helping his cousin Jinha repair a harvesting machine when the first alarms began to sound. At first, no one was worried. Alarms went off all the time on colony worlds, usually for storms or equipment failures or lost children. But these alarms were different. They were the defense alarms that no one had heard in years. Captain Jiwon Kim was running toward the defense center before the alarms finished their first cycle. Her training kicked in automatically, even though she had never expected to need it. As she reached the command center, Lieutenant Kyung-jae was already at his station, staring at the sensor displays with wide eyes. "Captain, we have multiple contacts entering the system," he reported, his voice shaking slightly. "Large ships, unknown configuration. They're not responding to our communication attempts." Jiwon looked at the display and felt her blood turn cold. 12 massive warships had appeared at the edge of the New Busan system, moving in perfect formation toward the colony world. She had never seen ships like these before, but she knew what they were. Velkhari battlecruisers, sound general evacuation, she ordered. Get everyone to the emergency shelters. Send a priority message to Earth, we are under attack. But even as she gave the orders, Ji-won knew it was too late. The Velkhari ships were already in weapons range and their intentions were clear. They had not come to negotiate or demand surrender. They had come to destroy. The first plasma bolt struck New Busan's orbital defense platforms, vaporizing them in seconds. The platforms had been designed to stop pirates and asteroids, not military warships. They offered no resistance to the Velkhari assault. On Harmony Point Research Station, Dr. Minho Park watched in horror as similar ships appeared on his sensors. He quickly activated the emergency transmission system, uploading everything he had learned about Velkhari technology and tactics to Earth. The data stream included detailed scans of their ships, their weapons, and their formation patterns. It was information that might help other humans survive what was coming. As the transmission completed, Minho could see the Velkhari ships turning toward his station. He had time for one final message. They came without warning. They're not here to conquer. They're here to kill us all. The plasma bombardment began moments later. New Busan cities disappeared in flashes of superheated light. The wheat fields where children had played that morning became seas of glass and ash. Harmony Point Research Station simply vanished, along with all the scientists who had dedicated their lives to making the galaxy a better place. Do-hyun, Choi survived only because he and his cousin had been working near the emergency spaceport when the attack began. They managed to reach an agricultural transport ship just as the bombing started. As their ship fled the dying world, Do-hyun looked back to see his aunt and uncle's farm consumed by fire. 37,000 people died on the 3 worlds that day. Their only crime, being human. The Velkhari broadcast their message across human space as the last fires burned. Your weakness offends the natural order. Abandon your remaining settlements or share their fate. On Earth, Commander Yuna Lee received the final transmissions from the dying colonies. She watched the recordings of plasma bombardments destroying hospitals and schools, of children running through burning streets, of peaceful farmers vaporized at their work. When the transmissions ended, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she began making calls. It was time for humanity to show the galaxy what real strength looked like. The silence from Earth was deafening. For 3 days after the Velkhari broadcast their ultimatum, human space went completely quiet. No diplomatic protests, no emergency council meetings, no desperate pleas for peace. The galaxy's communication networks, usually busy with human trade chatter and colony reports, carried nothing but empty static. Admiral Sun Ho Kang stood in the underground war room beneath Geneva, studying holographic displays that showed every human world, every ship, every installation across 17 star systems. The room had been built decades ago but never used for its intended purpose. Now, 73 men and women sat around the massive table, representing every branch of human military and civilian leadership. They expect us to run, Admiral Kang said quietly. His voice carried easily in the silent room. They expect us to pack up our remaining colonies and retreat to Earth like scared children. They think we are weak because we build farms instead of fortresses. General Nari Jung activated her personal display, showing detailed analysis of the Velkhari attack patterns. She had spent 40 years studying military strategy, but had never imagined she would need to plan a war of this scale. The attacks were coordinated across 3 systems simultaneously. That means they have faster-than-light communication, probably quantum entanglement networks. Their ships are heavily armed but not heavily armored. They rely on overwhelming firepower and enemy panic. Dr. Hyejin Seo looked up from her tablet, where she had been reviewing the technical data that Dr. Minho Park had transmitted before his death. Their weapons are energy-based, using focused plasma at specific frequencies. The power output is impressive, but the delivery system has limitations. If we can develop countermeasures, their advantage disappears. Captain Taemin Han, commander of Earth's Special Operations Forces, studied tactical maps of Velkhari space. 47 star systems, estimated population of 12 billion. Their military follows traditional conquest patterns. Massive fleets, orbital bombardment, ground occupation. They've never faced an enemy that could strike back at their homeworlds. Admiral Kang nodded slowly. Around the table, other officers were making notes, asking questions, developing plans. But underneath the professional discussion, there was something else. Something cold and patient and utterly determined. Dr. Seo, the Admiral said, how long do you need to develop weapons that can counter Velkari technology? 6 months, maybe 8. We'll need to completely retool our manufacturing facilities, but the principles are sound. Actually, sir, I think we can do better than just counter their weapons. We can make them useless. General Jung, can our forces be ready for offensive operations in 6 months? Admiral, our forces have been ready for offensive operations since yesterday. What we need is time to coordinate and plan. This won't be a defensive war fought in human space. We're going to take the fight to them. Captain Han leaned forward. Sir, I'd like permission to begin deep reconnaissance missions immediately. We need intelligence on Velkari industrial centers, command facilities, and fleet positions. My teams can be inside their space within 2 weeks. Admiral Kang looked around the table at the faces of Earth's military leadership. These were people who had spent their careers managing peaceful exploration and protecting trade routes. None of them had ever planned a war of conquest. But the destruction of 3 human worlds had changed something fundamental in every person in that room. Authorization granted, Captain. Dr. Seo, you have unlimited resources for weapons development. General Jung, begin immediate mobilization of all reserve forces. And I want absolute communication silence maintained. The Velkari think we're paralyzed by fear. Let them keep thinking that. Across human space, the transformation began immediately. On every colony world, civilian factories stopped producing farming equipment and started building weapons. The same engineers who designed irrigation systems were now designing targeting computers. Agricultural robots were converted into military drones. Passenger ships were refitted with armor and weapons. The 14 remaining human colonies became fortress worlds almost overnight. Children who had been learning about alien biology were now learning about defensive positions. Farmers who had spent their lives growing food were now manufacturing ammunition. Everyone worked with the same quiet determination, driven by images of burning cities and dead children. On New Geneva Colony, factory supervisor Insuk Bey watched her workers convert a grain processing plant into a missile assembly facility. These people had never built weapons before, but they worked with the precision and dedication that had made human colonies successful. They were not soldiers, but they understood what needed to be done. How many can we produce per day? Asked Colonel Min Jae-ro, the military advisor assigned to coordinate production. Right now, about 50 missiles per day. But give us another week to optimize the process and we can double that. Our people learn fast when they're motivated. Meanwhile, Captain Taemin Han's reconnaissance teams were already moving into Velkari space, using modified merchant vessels that appeared to be normal trading ships. The teams included linguists, engineers, and intelligence specialists who could analyze everything from military installations to communication networks. Lieutenant Jinsu Kwan piloted one of these ships toward the Velkari border system of Thaxor. His cargo hold was filled with legitimate trade goods, but hidden compartments contained advanced sensors and surveillance equipment. To any Velkari patrol, he looked like just another human merchant trying to continue normal business despite the recent attacks. Velkari patrol ship approaching, reported his sensor operator, Sergeant Yejin Mo. Single light cruiser. Probably just a routine patrol. Remember, we're scared human traders who don't know what's happening. Jinsu replied. Let them think we're just trying to keep our business running. The Velkari patrol boarded their ship and found exactly what they expected. Nervous human, merchants with cargo holds full of Earth-manufactured goods. The aliens were arrogant and dismissive, treating the humans like simple animals who were too stupid to understand the danger they were in. They never noticed the hidden sensors recording everything about their ships, their equipment, and their procedures. Similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems as human intelligence teams mapped every major Velkari installation. They learned about Velkari command structures, supply lines, and defensive positions. Most importantly, they confirmed what Dr. Seo had suspected. The Velkari relied on centralized command networks that could be disrupted. Back on Earth, Dr. Hyejin Seo made a breakthrough that would change everything. Working with the data from Dr. Park's final transmission, she discovered that Velkari weapons operated on a frequency that could be completely neutralized by a specific type of energy field. Better yet, the same technology could be adapted to make human weapons far more effective. Against Velkari defenses, it's like they designed their entire military around fighting enemies who don't understand physics, she explained to Admiral Kang. Once we deploy the countermeasures, their weapons become useless, and our weapons will cut through their defenses like paper. The production centers on every human world worked around the clock to build the new technology. Automated factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured military equipment at a pace that amazed even their designers. Human industrial capacity built for peaceful purposes proved capable of supporting a war machine that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. General Nari Jung coordinated the largest military mobilization in human history. Reserve forces were activated, new ships were built, and existing vessels were upgraded with the latest technology. But more importantly, she planned an operation that would attack every major Valkyrie installation simultaneously. 47 star systems, she explained to her staff. We hit all of them at once. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. They wanted to teach us about strength. We're going to show them what human strength really looks like. The Valkyrie, meanwhile, grew increasingly confident as the days passed without any human response. Their intelligence reports suggested that Earth's government was paralyzed by the scale of the attacks. Some Valkyrie commanders even began making plans to occupy the remaining human colonies. Without a fight, they had no idea that 47 human fleets were positioning themselves for the largest coordinated attack in galactic history. They could not imagine that the weak humans they despised were capable of the kind of industrial mobilization that was happening across human space. Young Do-hyun Choi, still recovering from his escape from New Busan, volunteered to join one of the attack fleets. He was too young for combat, but Admiral Kang approved his assignment as a communications specialist. The boy who had watched his world burn would help coordinate the response that would burn theirs. As the 6th month approached, Admiral Kang prepared to give the order that would change the galaxy forever. Human forces were in position, weapons were ready, and intelligence on Valkyrie positions was complete. The time for silence was ending. They destroyed our children while they played in gardens, Admiral Kang said to his assembled fleet commanders. They killed our grandparents while they read stories. They thought we were weak because we chose peace. Tomorrow they learn what we... At exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time, 47 human fleets appeared simultaneously in 47 Valkyrie star systems. The attacks began without warning, without negotiation, and without mercy. Captain Jun Park stood on the bridge of the dreadnought New Busan's Revenge, watching the Valkyrie homeworld grow larger on her display screens. The ship had been built in secret over the past 6 months, using technology that combined human engineering with lessons learned from studying Valkyrie weaknesses. It was 3 times larger than any previous human warship and carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. But Captain Park had no intention of destroying cities. Her orders were very specific: eliminate military targets, preserve civilian infrastructure, and demonstrate that humans could show restraint even in the middle of total war. Valkyrie, Defense Fleet moving to intercept, reported Commander Jinwoo Nam, her tactical officer. 12 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers. They're using standard battle formation. Target their command ship first, Captain Park ordered. All weapons, precision strikes on their bridge and engineering sections. Disable, don't destroy, the way. New Busan's Revenge opened fire with weapons that the Valkyrie had never seen before. Instead of the crude energy blasts that most species used, human weapons fired concentrated beams that could slice through enemy ships with surgical precision. The Valkyrie command ship found its bridge severed from the rest of the vessel, leaving the crew alive but unable to fight. Across the Valkyrie homeworld's orbital defenses, similar scenes played out as human ships demonstrated technological superiority that shocked their enemies. Valkyrie weapons, which had seemed so powerful when destroying defenseless colonies, proved completely ineffective against human defensive fields. Major Seok Jin-yu led the 1st Marine Assault Team to board a disabled Valkyrie cruiser. His soldiers moved through the enemy ship with efficiency that came from months of preparation and years of experience handling complex equipment in dangerous environments. Unlike Valkyrie warriors who relied on brute force, human Marines used intelligence and precision to achieve their objectives. Valkyrie crew is surrendering on decks 4 through 7, reported Sergeant Dayon Kim over the comm system. They seem confused that we're not killing prisoners. Secure the command center and download their communication codes, Major Yu replied. Medical teams, treat any wounded Velkari you find. We're here to win a war, not commit genocide. The Velkari crew members who were taken prisoner found themselves treated better than many of their own officers had treated them. Human medics provided medical care without discrimination. Human guards shared their food rations, and human interpreters explained that surrender meant safety, not slavery. Lieutenant Hana Kim led Fighter Squadron 7 in the attack on Velkari orbital shipyards above their industrial moon. Her pilots flew with skills that came from years of navigating busy shipping lanes, docking with moving platforms, and performing precision maneuvers in crowded space. These civilian skills translated into devastating military effectiveness. Target the weapon systems first, she ordered her squadron. Leave the construction bays intact. We might be able to use those facilities later. Her fighters moved through Velkari defensive formations like dancers, avoiding enemy fire while delivering precisely targeted strikes. The Velkari pilots, trained for straight-line combat against other military vessels, could not adapt to the fluid, unpredictable tactics that human pilots had learned from years of commercial flying. Within 6 hours, the Velkari orbital defenses were completely neutralized. Their ships were disabled, their stations captured, and their command structure in complete chaos. But the most shocking thing for Velkari observers was what the humans did next. Instead of beginning orbital bombardment of population centers, human ships began broadcasting evacuation warnings to civilian areas near military installations. Tae Hyung Nam, the fleet's psychological warfare specialist, coordinated messages that were transmitted in perfect Velkari language to every communication device on the planet. Citizens of the Velkari homeworld, his messages said, we are here to end your government's ability to wage war, not to harm innocent people. Military personnel who surrender will be treated according to galactic law. Civilians who remain in their homes will not be harmed. Your leaders chose to destroy our children while they played in gardens. We could do the same to yours. We will not. The effect on Velkari morale was catastrophic. Their entire worldview was built on the idea that military strength justified any action. The concept of an enemy powerful enough to destroy them but choosing not to do so created confusion that spread through their ranks faster than any weapon. Across Velkari space, similar attacks were occurring with identical precision and restraint. Human fleets appeared without warning, destroyed military targets with overwhelming superiority, captured strategic positions, and then offered surrender terms instead of total destruction. On the industrial world of Krek 7, General Nyan Song led the occupation of the planet's largest weapons manufacturing complex. Her forces moved through the facility like they had trained there for years, shutting down production lines while protecting the workers inside. Velkari supervisor approaching under a white flag, reported Colonel Minseok Jang. He wants to negotiate. Tell him that workers who cooperate will keep their jobs under new management, General Song replied. Those weapons production lines will be retooled to build farming equipment and medical supplies. We need their expertise, not their deaths. The Velkari workers, expecting execution or slavery, found themselves offered employment contracts and protection guarantees. Human occupation forces provided better working conditions and higher pay than the previous Velkari management had ever offered. On the fortress world of Thek Prime, Admiral Wanho Yoon coordinated the capture of the Velkari Empire's central communication hub. This facility controlled military communications across all 47 Velkari systems, making it the most heavily defended position in their space. The attack began with human special forces disabling the station's defensive systems from the inside. Captain Taemin Han's reconnaissance teams, who had spent months mapping Velkari installations, guided the assault teams through security checkpoints and defensive positions with perfect precision. Communication center secured, reported Major Haeon Che. We have access to their entire military network. Orders, fleet positions, supply schedules, everything. Download it all, Admiral Yoon ordered. Then broadcast our surrender terms on every Velkari military frequency. I want every ship commander and planetary governor to hear our offer at the same time. The surrender terms were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen in a military conquest. Human forces offered to stop their attacks immediately in exchange for complete Velkari military disarmament, dissolution of their empire, and cooperation in establishing new governments on formerly occupied worlds. Velkari military personnel would be retrained for civilian roles. Velkari civilians would receive protection and aid during the transition. But the most shocking term was the last one. Humans offered to leave Velkari space entirely once peaceful. Governments were established and war crimes tribunals were completed. They wanted no territory, no tribute, no permanent occupation. They simply wanted to ensure that the Velkari could never again destroy innocent colonies. Young Do-hyun Choi, working as a communications specialist aboard the command ship New Seoul, Rising, monitored Velkari responses to the surrender terms. He listened to confused conversations between Velkari commanders who could not understand why an enemy, capable of destroying them, would offer such generous terms. "Sir," he reported to Captain Boyoung-an, "most Velkari fleet commanders are requesting clarification of our terms. They don't believe we actually mean to leave their space after the war ends." "Tell them we mean exactly what we said," Captain An replied. "We're not conquerors, we're teachers, and the lesson is simple. Strength exists to protect growth, not to prevent it." By the end of the first week of fighting, Velkari resistance was collapsing across their entire empire. Their centralized command structure, designed for coordinating conquests, had become a liability when humans systematically captured or destroyed every communication hub. Fleet commanders found themselves isolated, unable to coordinate defense or retreat. More importantly, the Velkari were discovering that their entire understanding of warfare was wrong. They had built their empire by convincing other species that resistance was hopeless, that surrender meant death or slavery. But humans demonstrated that surrender could mean survival, cooperation, and even prosperity. The psychological impact was greater than any weapon. Velkari civilians began actively helping human forces locate military installations in exchange for protection and aid. Velkari military units surrendered in growing numbers rather than face destruction by an enemy that treated prisoners better than their own government treated citizens. On the border world of Vex 9, an entire Velkari battle fleet surrendered without firing a shot after their commander received detailed medical care for his injured crew from human forces. The commander, Admiral Korvek, transmitted a message that was intercepted throughout Velkari space. "They heal our wounded and feed our hungry. What kind of enemy shows mercy to those?" Ambassador Minji Lim stepped out of her shuttle onto the landing platform of the Velkari Imperial Palace, the first human to set foot on the Velkari homeworld as anything other than a prisoner. Around her, the evidence of human restraint was everywhere. Damaged military installations stood next to intact civilian buildings. Disabled warships floated in orbit above untouched cities. The Velkari delegation that met her looked confused and defeated. These were beings who had built an empire on the principle that might makes right, and now they faced an enemy whose might had made them merciful instead. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo-an accompanied Ambassador Lim, along with a security detail that included several Velkari prisoners who had volunteered to serve as interpreters. "High Commander Velak," Ambassador Lim said, addressing the leader of the Velkari delegation in his own language. "Thank you for agreeing to these negotiations. I understand this is difficult for your people." High Commander Velak, once the supreme military leader of 47 star systems, looked like a broken man. His empire lay in ruins, but strangely, his people were safer and better fed than they had been in decades. Human occupation forces had not only protected civilians, but had also improved their living conditions. "Ambassador Lim," Velak replied slowly, "I must ask directly, what do you want from us? Your forces could destroy every city on every world we control. Your technology is superior to ours in every way, yet you offer us terms that are more generous than we have ever offered to anyone. Why?" Ambassador Lim had expected this question. She had spent months studying Velkari psychology and culture, preparing for this moment. "High Commander, your people believe that strength means the ability to take whatever you want. But true strength is having the power to take everything and choosing instead to build something better. The negotiations took place in the same room, where the Velkari High Command had planned the destruction of human colonies, but now the walls displayed images of human-occupied Velkari worlds where former enemies worked together to rebuild damaged infrastructure and establish fair governments. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo presented the occupation reports that showed the transformation taking place across Velkari space. Human engineers were repairing damage from the war while Velkari workers learned new skills. Human teachers were establishing schools that taught both Velkari history and human philosophy. Human doctors were treating injuries and illnesses that the previous Velkari government had ignored. Your people are working alongside ours, Admiral An explained. They're not slaves or prisoners. They're partners in building something neither of our species could create alone. Dr. Jungkook Song, the xenopsychologist who had spent months studying Velkari behavior, explained what humans had learned about their former enemies. Your species evolved as apex predators who survived by dominating everything around you. That trait helped you build a powerful empire, but it also prevented you from understanding cooperation and mutual benefit. Humans evolved differently, Dr. Song continued. We learned to survive by working together, by making our enemies into allies, by building communities that were stronger than the sum of their parts. That's why our response to your attacks confused you so much. High Commander Velak listened to these explanations with growing amazement. You studied us before the war began. We studied you because we hoped the war could be avoided, Ambassador Lim replied. Even after you destroyed our colonies, we studied you because we wanted to understand how to help your people build a better future. Commander Unji Bai, who led the peacekeeping forces on occupied Velkari worlds, joined the negotiations via holographic communication. Behind her, the images showed Velkari and human children playing together in schools that had been built in the ruins of former military bases. The transformation is happening faster than we expected, Commander Bay reported. Velkari civilians who experienced human occupation don't want to return to the old system. They're asking us to stay and help them build democratic governments. Perhaps the most powerful testimony came from Do-hyun Choi, the young survivor of New Busan, who now worked as a liaison between human forces and Velkari civilians. He appeared on screen from the world of Krek 7, where he was helping coordinate refugee assistance. High Commander, Do-hyun said, your forces killed my family and destroyed my home. By your people's logic, I should want revenge. But I'm here helping Velkari refugees because I learned something from humans that your empire never taught. Strength isn't about who you can hurt. It's about who you can help. The sight of a human victim of Velkari aggression now protecting Velkari civilians had a profound impact on the negotiations. Several members of the Velkari delegation openly wept, a display of emotion that would have been considered weakness under their old system. Over the following weeks, Ambassador Lim worked with reformed Velkari leaders to design a new government structure. The Velkari Federation would be a democratic alliance of independent worlds, each choosing its own government while cooperating on trade, defense, and mutual aid. Former Velkari military officers were retrained as engineers, teachers, and administrators. Their discipline and organizational skills, once used for conquest, were redirected toward building infrastructure and managing complex civilian projects. Many discovered that they were happier in peaceful roles than they had ever been as warriors. Young-ho Park, a former Velkari general who had helped plan the attacks on human colonies, became one of the most effective advocates for the new system. He traveled throughout former Velkari space, speaking to military units and civilian populations about the benefits of cooperation over conquest. I spent 30 years believing that our strength came from our ability to destroy our enemies, General Park told audiences. But humans showed me that real strength comes from turning enemies into friends, from building instead of breaking, from protecting instead of conquering. The trials for war crimes were conducted with the same restraint that had characterized the entire human campaign. Velkari leaders who had ordered attacks on civilian targets were tried in courts that included both human and Velkari judges. But even these trials focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. High Commander, Velak himself was sentenced to spend 10 years working in the memorial gardens that were being built on the sites of destroyed human colonies. He would help plant trees and tend flowers in places where his orders had created ash and destruction. The memorial worlds became powerful symbols of the transformation. New Busan 2 rose from the radioactive ruins of the original colony, but this time the population included Velkari families, who had chosen to live under human governance rather than return to traditional Velkari territories. Ji-won Kim, the captain who had tried to defend the original New Busan, returned to command the new colony's defense forces. But now her unit included former Velkari officers, who worked alongside humans to protect both species from the pirates and raiders that operated on the galaxy's outer edges. "It's strange," Captain Kim told Do-hyun during one of his visits to the Memorial World. "6 months ago I was planning to fight these people to the death. Now I trust them with my life every day." The economic integration proceeded even faster than political reform. Velkari engineering expertise, combined with human organizational skills and ethical guidelines, created industrial capabilities that neither species could have achieved alone. Former weapons factories were converted to produce everything from farming equipment to medical supplies to artistic works. The galaxy watched these developments with amazement and growing respect. Other aggressive species began reconsidering their expansion plans as news spread about the human-style victory, a conquest that left the conquered people better off than before. Trade. Delegations from dozens of species arrived to study the new Velkari Federation, hoping to learn how to achieve similar transformations in their own regions. The concept of winning by making your enemies stronger entered diplomatic vocabulary throughout the galaxy. But the most significant change was in how both humans and Velkari saw themselves. Humans had discovered that their values of cooperation and restraint were not weaknesses, but tremendous sources of strength. Velkari had learned that their martial skills and discipline could be used to build rather than destroy. As the formal peace treaty was signed, Ambassador Lim reflected on how much had changed since the first Velkari attacks. "We could have destroyed your empire and scattered your people across the galaxy," she told the assembled Velkari leaders. "Instead, we helped you build something better than empire, a community where strength serves everyone." High Commander Valak, now the elected president of the Velkari Federation, signed the treaty with hands that shook slightly. "Ambassador, when this war began, I believed humans were weak because you chose peace. Now I understand that you are strong because peace is what you choose to build." The signing ceremony took place on New Busan 2, in a garden where human and Velkari children played together among flowers that bloomed in soil that had once been poisoned by war. It was a scene that would have been impossible to imagine when the first attacks began, but now seemed as natural as sunrise. The war was over, but the real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning. 5 years after the last Velkari ship surrendered, President Soo-young Hwang stood before the Galactic Council in the Great Assembly Hall on Centauri Prime. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, more than had ever gathered in one place before. They had come to hear about humanity's new garden doctrine, a proposal that would reshape how civilizations interacted across the galaxy. "Honored delegates," President Hwang began, "5 years ago, the galaxy watched as humanity responded to aggression with overwhelming force. But what you saw was not conquest in the traditional sense. It was teaching. Today I want to share what we have learned from that experience." In the audience, Ambassador Minji Lim watched with pride as President Hwang explained humanity's philosophy. Beside her sat Young-ho Park, the former Velkari general who now served as a Federation diplomat. His presence at the Galactic Council was itself proof of how much the galaxy had changed. "Traditional warfare seeks to destroy the enemy's ability to fight," President Hwang continued. "But the new Garden Doctrine seeks to eliminate the enemy's desire to fight by showing them a better way to use their strength. Instead of spheres of influence based on military control, we propose cooperative zones based on mutual development." Director Woojin Shin, who oversaw rehabilitation programs across former Velkari space, had prepared detailed reports that showed the success of this approach. Velkari worlds that had been conquered military states were now thriving democracies. Former soldiers had become teachers, engineers, and artists. War production facilities had been converted to manufacture everything from medical equipment to children's toys. "The results speak for themselves," Director Shin explained to the assembled delegates. "Velkari productivity has increased by 300% since the end of the war. Crime rates have dropped to the lowest levels in their recorded history. Most significantly, Opinion polls show that 92% of Velkari citizens prefer their current government to the previous imperial system. Captain Hyunwoo Lee entered the council chamber wearing the uniform of the Integrated Defense Fleet, a joint human Velkari organization that now patrolled trade routes across 3 sectors. His crew included former enemies who worked together so effectively that other species had requested similar integration programs. The IDF has responded to over 400 incidents in the past year, Captain Lee reported. Pirate attacks, natural disasters, medical emergencies, trade disputes. In every case, our mixed crews have demonstrated that former enemies can become effective partners when they share common goals. The captain's ship, the Unity's Dawn, was itself a symbol of transformation. Built using Velkari engineering excellence guided by human strategic wisdom, it represented capabilities that neither species could have achieved alone. Its crew quarters housed humans and Velkari who had learned each other's languages, shared each other's foods, and formed friendships that transcended their species' troubled history. But the most powerful testimony came from the younger generation. Jin Seo Kim, now 17 years old and a student at the New Busan Technical Institute, addressed the council via holographic link. Behind him, the audience could see human and Velkari students working together on engineering projects. Honored delegates, Jinseo said, "I was 8 years old when my school was evacuated during the Velkari attacks. I remember being afraid of the aliens who wanted to hurt us. But now my best friend is Korvek, whose father was a Velkari pilot during the war. We're building a water purification system together that will help colonies throughout this sector." The sight of human and Velkari youth collaborating on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy moved many delegates to tears. Here was proof that the cycle of hatred and revenge could be broken, that former enemies could indeed become partners in building a better future. Do-hyun Choi, now 20 years old and serving as a colonial administrator on New Busan 2, provided an update on the memorial worlds. These planets, once sites of destruction, had become centers of learning and cooperation that attracted visitors from across the galaxy. "We receive over 10,000 visitors each month," Do-hyun reported. "They come to study our integration programs, our conflict resolution methods, and our cooperative governance models. But mostly they come to see proof that peace is possible even after terrible wars." The memorial gardens on New Busan 2 had become particularly famous. Velkari families now tended flower beds in places where their military had once created craters. Human and Velkari children played together among trees planted to honor the victims of the original attacks. The gardens demonstrated that healing was possible even from the deepest wounds. President Young-ho Park of the Velkari Federation addressed the council to explain his people's transformation. His speech was broadcast throughout Velkari space, where former imperial citizens watched their elected leaders speaking as an equal among galactic powers. "5 years ago, my people believed that strength meant the ability to take whatever we wanted," President Park said. "We conquered 47 star systems and enslaved billions of beings because we thought that made us powerful. But humans taught us that real power comes from the ability to help others achieve their potential." He went on to describe the changes in Velkari society. Former military academies had become universities teaching engineering, medicine, and the arts. Weapons research facilities had been converted to develop new technologies for agriculture and space exploration. The warrior culture that had driven Velkari expansion for centuries had been transformed into a culture that valued building over breaking. "Our young people no longer dream of conquest," President Park continued. "They dream of discovery, of creation, of cooperation. They want to explore new worlds, not to claim them, but to learn from them. This is the gift that humanity gave us, not defeat, but a better way to be strong." The economic data supported these cultural changes. Trade between human and Velkari worlds had increased by over 500% since the end of the war. Joint research projects had produced technological advances that benefited both species. Most importantly, the standard of living on Velkari worlds had improved dramatically under democratic governance. But the new Garden Doctrine's influence extended far beyond human and Velkari space. Throughout the galaxy, aggressive species were reconsidering their expansion strategies as news spread about humanity's unusual victory. The concept of human-style strength had entered diplomatic vocabulary, representing the idea that true power included the wisdom to choose restraint. The Zephyrian Empire, which had been planning attacks on several smaller species, instead offered those species protection agreements and trade partnerships. The crystalline collective abandoned their territorial expansion in favor of scientific cooperation with their neighbors. Even the notoriously aggressive void hunters began exploring peaceful alternatives to their traditional raiding campaigns. The galaxy is changing, observed Dr. Yanwu Jin, humanity's leading expert on interspecies relations.
Species that once saw war as the only path to prosperity are discovering that cooperation can achieve better results with less cost.
The human example has shown that there are alternatives to the cycle of conquest and revenge. As President Huang concluded her presentation to the Galactic Council, she invited the delegates to visit human and Velkari worlds to see the transformation for themselves. Many accepted immediately, eager to learn how they might apply similar principles in their own regions. The council session ended with the formal adoption of the new Garden Protocols, a set of guidelines for peaceful conflict resolution and cooperative development. Over 150 species signed the agreement, committing to try human-style approaches before resorting to military action. That evening, a celebration was held in the memorial gardens of New Busan the Setu. The gathering included humans and Velkari, who had once been enemies, now working together to tend flowers that bloomed in soil that had once been poisoned by war. Children of both species played among the trees. Their laughter carried on the gentle breeze. Do-hyun Choi, who had watched his original world burn 5 years earlier, now welcomed a delegation of young Velkari students who had come to study at the agricultural college, built where his family's farm had once stood. As human and Velkari teenagers worked together to plant new seedlings, he reflected on the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. True strength isn't the power to destroy your enemies, he told the mixed group of students. It's the wisdom to turn them into friends, and the patience to help them become the best version of themselves. Above them, the night sky was filled with new lights, not the glow of burning colonies, but the illumination of thriving worlds where former enemies worked together to build something better than either could create alone. Transport ships moved between the stars, carrying not weapons or conquerors but teachers, students, engineers, and artists who shared knowledge and friendship across the vast distances of space. The galaxy had learned that peace was not just the absence of war, but the presence of cooperation. Humanity had shown that the strongest civilizations were not those that could destroy their enemies, but those that could help their enemies become better versions of themselves. As the celebration continued into the night, children born after the war,